Hey everyone, Ryan Bolton here, local mortgage expert, ryanbolton.com. I am a mortgage nerd. I love talking about real estate, mortgage loans, helping people out. I saw a really interesting post on one of the Facebook groups I'm a part of that was talking about some of the biggest pet peeves that we as loan officers run into when dealing with real estate agents as part of this crazy difficult transaction. And it's one of the most difficult transactions that most people are ever going to go through. Now, I know obviously there's attorneys dealing with life and death situations. There's people buying multi-million dollar corporations and businesses, totally. But when you talk about kind of the most common thing that most people will go through, one of the biggest financial transactions they're ever going to go through, is definitely buying a house, whether it's the first one, second one, third one. I mean, there's something about this transaction. I mean, you go to closing and the stack of papers you have to sign is this thick, all the process to get there, all the nervousness. Am I going to get the loan? Are we going to close on time? All the pieces that have to come together. Really, the loan officer, the real estate agent are really the hub to kind of make that whole process hopefully go as smoothly as possible. But there's definitely times where loan officers and real estate agents, they just butt heads. There's still going to be different personalities. There's going to be different things going on, especially if you're a new relationship with that agent, or maybe the client came to you first and then you went to an agent. And so there isn't that maybe that relationship with, say, a preferred lender or preferred agent or whatever it is. But I thought it was pretty interesting looking at all the comments of what are some of the biggest pet peeves that we as loan officers run into when it comes to real estate agents. And I look at this list, and almost all of it comes down to sales techniques and setting expectations. I'm amazed, whether it's loan officer or real estate agent, how setting those expectations and having those communication skills is where many of these problems come from. You have to realize this is a sales business when it really comes down to it. You are not selling a product, it's a service. So the communication, that's really what separates you from other real estate agents, other loan officers. And I see a lot of loan officers, if we're going to talk about some pet peeves that real estate agents might have, I see a lot of loan officers that don't know how to set those expectations, or have a lot of crossing their fingers that they can meet a deadline, or know there's an issue they don't want to bring up, or say, hey, we're going to close Friday. We're going to close Friday. Yeah, we got loan documents out. And then that doesn't happen. So I'm always trying to make sure that I'm setting those expectations, trying to stay ahead of the curve, and always say, okay, we're hoping to close on Friday, worst case Monday, Tuesday. I'll know for sure, come Thursday or come Wednesday, just to make sure that we're staying on top of that. But back to the pet peeves that loan officers have with many real estate agents. When I looked through the list, I kind of compiled 5 things that were the most common kind of categories that we run into issues when working with real estate agents. So number one, this was came up a ton. It's basically the best way to say it is stay in your lane. That was the most common kind of phrase that we'd see from loan officers of real estate agents, or quoting maybe interest rates, or quoting payments, or quoting certain loan programs that they're not licensed or up to date to do. And we as licensed loan officers, if you quote a rate or a payment or certain trigger terms, you then have to disclose all kinds of other stuff, APR, where you came up with the payment, what's it based on, who qualifies, what are the limitations. So it just triggers all of these other required disclosures. We actually call them trigger terms in the industry. So when you're a real estate agent, you start quoting rate, that's where you're kind of stepping into what's required of a license to be a mortgage licensed loan officer. So you need to be really careful as real estate agents when you are quoting those things, because it can get you in trouble by not being licensed. And the other thing you have to look at is once you start quoting that rate, you're also setting an expectation for that rate, and rates change every day. And the rates that are posted or advertised out there, just like with car loans, they're typically some of the best you can get. It's not like everybody walking in your door qualifies for that interest rate. They're trying to advertise the lowest rate they can. So we're talking people that are putting 30% down, been on their job for 10 years, 20% debt ratio, 900 credit scores. I mean, that you're talking about a smaller percentage than what most clients that walk in the door. So that's part of our job, is to say, okay, what's the best loan that fits this client's situation? Because every situation is different. So number one, to say it bluntly, stay in your lane. You're a real estate agent, focus on that part of it, and refer those mortgage interest rate questions to your preferred lender, or the lender that your borrower is working with. Number two is um, not diffusing situations. That's really the best way to do it. There's a lack of teamwork. There's a lack of helping when something does go wrong, instead of just adding fuel to the fire. This comes up a lot. So you have a client that's upset. Maybe they haven't heard from their loan officer, or something's going wrong. Instead of the agent kind of diffusing and calming the situation by saying, okay, let's get to the bottom of it. We can fix it. No problem. they seem to add fuel to the fire. They'll sit there and go, "Oh no, that's outrageous. I've never seen this happen before. We got to figure this out." And you almost ramp up the borrower even more instead of diffusing and saying, "It's okay. This is normal. Let's get a hold of the loan officer. Let's figure out kind of what's going on, or the home inspector, or the appraiser, or whoever, whatever the issue might be." There's this sense, this detachment that we're on the same team, that it almost becomes something where adding fuel onto the fire and getting the client more riled up than working on defusing and getting to the bottom of it. I often use the phrase that clients don't know how all this stuff works. That's why they have us. But if we're kind of chopping each other's feet off, we're not going to get to the goal that we all want, is to help that client own a home. So that's one thing to always do is the clients get riled up. The natural tendency is to kind of get riled up with them, jump on their side, have that feeling where a lot of times it's like, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's make some phone calls. I'll get to the bottom of it. And I would say here's another tip for loan officers. If there is an issue, I always call the professionals first, the title company, the agent, the insurance first, see if we can solve the problem, then loop the client in. I very rarely go to the client first, get them kind of riled up or whatever, and all of a sudden they start calling the agent. And the agent gets broadsided with some question, they don't even know what's going on. So I always try to make sure we start with talking with professionals first, because usually you can diffuse the situation or find out the answer. I can't tell you how many times we've had some sort of issue that I talk to the agent, and the agent may have different information, maybe different conversations with the client than I've had, that we can then, okay, that helps us get the solution. Everything that we're doing here is all man-made. The contracts, the plot lines, the appraisals, the underwriting guidelines, they're all man-made. There's nothing about it that can't be man-made solved in many, 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 many cases. So I'd say that's the number two most common thing I see as a pet peeve, is the idea that agents don't help diffuse situations, they only add fuel to the fire. All right, number three. This is kind of a funny one, and I'll just use the quote here. I've been in the business for X amount of years. I've been in the business for 30 years, and I've never heard a lender needing X document. That it happens a ton, where you have somebody that says, "I've been in the business 30 years. My clients have never had to do a full bank statement." It's like, really? We're all following the same guidelines. Now, maybe there's some unique things that might pop up with the client's income or crypto or something new, but it's amazing how we always need, about 90% of the time, it's always the same stuff. There might be a little weird little thing here and there, but I've had client, say, "I've never heard of a client need tax returns or W-2 or all the W-2s or a complete bank statement," and it's like, what? How many deals have you done in 30 years where you didn't need your client to turn in a bank statement, or that the screenshot isn't enough? We need the actual bank statement. I see that one a lot, where they say, "Well, I did turn in the pay stubs. I don't know why they need more." It's like, well, the pay stub you turned in was 3 months old. When we first started, we need an updated one, or something like that. But that's it. So many agents have said that over the past, where it's something along the lines, "I've been in the business X amount of years, and I've never had a lender require X." And it's just like, man, that how many loans have you done? I mean, it very rarely is it something truly just completely out of the blue. I mean, it really is very rarely that it's something like, "Hey, we need a blood sample," or something like that. So I thought that was kind of funny. And when that was in the feed on the Facebook channel, everybody started jumping in on that one and just had all these comments. "Oh, I had, one time I needed a bank statement, or I needed something." And the agent said, "I've never had that. My clients have to provide that." So I always thought that was kind of interesting. All right. Number four, this one comes up a lot too, is how hard it can be to get a hold of real estate agents and even loan officers. I'd say this is both ways, but this is a pet peeve on real estate agents. So getting a hold of people in this business can be surprisingly difficult. And it's something where I find that's 80% of my job, is to answer the phone or get back to people really, really quickly. Even in my voicemail, I pride myself on making sure I'm calling people back really quickly, or answer it. Even if I have to answer and say, "Hey, I'm on the other line. Give me 2 seconds. I'll call you right back." Because it is something where that communication is such a huge part of this transaction. You've got clients that don't know everything that's going on. They're waiting on stuff. They turn in paperwork. They don't hear anything. I mean, it's really important to just keep touching and calling every client every single time you have something new, or just when you say you're going to. But I bet you right now, I bet you if I where's my phone? I bet you if I called 10 real estate agents right now, probably 3 I might get a hold of, maybe out of 10. Now the other 10, maybe 3 might get back to me pretty quick. The other one will be the others will be the next day. Now that can happen. I'm not saying you're going to be perfect with that. I'm not perfect with nobody is. But it's an alarming rate of how hard it is to get a hold of real estate agents during certain transactions, and how quickly they want you to answer the phone. Like I've had calls at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday or whatever like that. And you can tell there's a frantic thing in their voice. They need a pre-approval because they're working, they're trying to submit an offer right then, which happens all the time. And there's almost an expectation I need to get a hold of you right when I call. But when the doors, when it kind of swings the other way, it seems like they're a little more laxed when they need to get a hold of you. We need to get a hold of them. So I have got some great real estate agents I work with that really are good with answering the phone. But if there's one thing you can do as a real estate agent to be better with your loan officers, to be better with your clients, is really just answer that darn phone. That will save you so much, and you'll stand out from other agents so much if that's the one thing you do in your business is answer the darn phone. Just answer it. Or even if you have to answer and say, I'll call you right back. Give me 5 minutes, something like that. It's just amazing how big that is. Here's the last one I saw that went into some crazy rabbit holes. I don't think I've had as many issues with, but I definitely can see why it can be an issue. So number 5 is setting a closing time at the title company. So the agents will set the closing date. And it's amazing how often they'll set it for 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. on a Friday morning. So we as the mortgage company, now we have to have the loan docs basically ready Thursday, a whole day earlier. And we don't have any time to make any mistakes or errors, and there's always little things you have to have. It's just amazing how much easier it is to set the closings for later in the afternoon, just so we can get the docs, get them printed, get them ready. It's amazing how setting that date is setting a benchmark. It's setting an expectation that's very hard and puts a lot of pressure on everybody involved in the transaction, the title company, the loan officers, the closing teams, all that, to meet the deadline that was just artificially created. It wasn't like that deadline had to be at that time. It's amazing how often they're trying to close. They set the date so early, so we just lose that day. I can't tell you how many times that I'll get a call from the title company saying, "Hey, we need docs by this time. The title, this closing's been set. The agent set the closing date." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, we're not clear to close yet. We're not done with underwriting." It's like, why set a deadline that makes you look bad if you can't meet it when you're not in control of the deadline? Like I would never do the opposite to any other business and say, "Okay, go to my mechanic and say, okay, I need the car back by Friday at 8 a.m." And they're like, "You're not in control of that." Even I'm not in control of that all the time. It's a closing team, and there's other files that are out there, and there's end of the month. I mean, a lot of them are always seem to be that last couple business days of the month, which are always crazy. So the biggest tip I can give is talk with your loan officers first about setting a date. Try to set it in the afternoon. Try to set it in the early evening. Sometimes even easy for the clients. I see clients who are like, "Man, I didn't really want to close at 10 a.m. I had to take off work, or I had to be late, or take the day off just to meet this deadline that somebody created." So that's one of the best tips I can give you when it comes to scheduling is talk with the loan officer. They're the ones really more in control of when those documents are going to be ready, and give yourself a little leeway. Give yourself, half the day, a business day, end of the day. It can cause so much less stress than having to be there early. Now, I know there's some states that are dry and wet when it comes to sending funds as well. So sometimes this won't affect every single state out there. But I'm telling you, it's so much better to close and give yourself the time to make sure the paperwork's there. Try to avoid the contract settlement deadline at the last couple business days of the month. That can make a big difference because there's so many contracts that just kind of round to the end of the month, last day of the business. And with all the other files that are there, it really can be an added frustration when it doesn't need to be. They're very, very seldom when you're early in the stage doing the contract, you're setting it 30 days out. Look at the calendar and say, "Oh man, that happens to fall the day before a holiday, or that happens to fall on a Friday afternoon," and something like that. Make it a Wednesday, make it middle of the week, so that way if there is a delay, you've got 2 more business days to solve it. A lot of people set the closing for Friday. If something goes wrong, the clients are expecting to move in that weekend. Now all of a sudden they miss the weekend and they're moving in on a Monday. Where if you would have set the date on a Wednesday, Thursday, you give them a chance to be into the property Thursday night, maybe even Friday. Now they have a much smoother process through the closing. So really, obviously we don't have to close exactly on settlement deadlines. We can close early in some cases, but so many times I see those closing dates, those last business days of the month, where it could be so easily avoided, that extra stress, by just being the first week of the month instead of the last, or middle of the week and middle of the day or later. Try that on your next closing and see how much smoother and easier it goes. And please, please don't set the closing without talking to your loan officer. Make sure everything's good. Don't set this artificial deadline that we all have to scramble to meet, or we look bad. It's like we didn't even set the deadline, and now we have to be forced to meet it, which means we got to pull strings, or we got to get other files out of the way, or or we just set ourselves up for failure. Why would you do that? We're in a sales business. Set realistic expectations and exceed them. It's way better to say, hey, we're going to be closing on Wednesday and it'd be a Tuesday, or we're closing on time, or say, hey, we're ready for Thursday. Hey, we can close Wednesday. That's way better than saying, oh, man, we still don't have documents. Well, I've been sitting here at the title company since 10 a.m. It's now noon. What are we doing? That's the worst when you have a client sitting there and you can't get the loan docs out because we weren't ready to be closing at that time. And it's amazing how many more things can be solved if you have half a day to work on it when you have that deadline that you can meet. So, hope this was fun. I thought it was kind of fun. Might get me in some hot water, some of my real estate agents, but we all can be better. We can all do better. And so much of it is learning better skills and communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't cross your fingers and lie, loan officers, and don't tell things to the client, real estate agents, that you don't tell the loan officer. Don't have that communication. We're all on the same team. We're all here to help people get into homes. That's what we're doing. That's what we're passionate about, what we're excited about, what we're getting paid to do, what we feed our families with. This is the fun part of the job. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. And don't make it more frustrating for the client. We're the experts. We need to act like it. So there's probably other pet peeves. If you have any, please comment below, whether you're a real estate agent, loan officer, or client, what some of the things that you've seen out there. I'd love to interact with you on some of your experiences, some of your pet peeves you've had out there. But if you ever need help with a home loan, love to earn your business, check out my website at ryanbolt.com, and we'll see you next time.